This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. We're in the Matchroom bubble here, ahead of Chisora versus Parker, live on Sky Sports Box Office and DAZN. Making his long-awaited return to the UK to fight, Mr. Chris Eubank Jr. All right, mate?
Great. In shape and on weight. So I just had fish and chips, actually.
Sorry, say that again. You had fish and chips?
Yeah. Just finished it, yeah. That's how on weight I am. I woke up, I was 2 pounds over the weight limit this morning. So yeah, I had a little bit of fish and chips, a little bit of energy. Got the public workout in a few hours. Yeah, feeling good.
Is it going to feel a bit weird actually fighting in the UK again after a couple of years? I know you didn't kind of have that many fights in that period we're talking about, but it has been a while since you fought here.
Yeah. So my last fight was in New York. Lasted 2 rounds, and ever since then I've been in the States. I've been in America training, living out there. It won't be weird fighting back here. I've fought out here my whole life, but it's definitely good to be back. I've only been back in the country for about a month, so yeah, I'm happy to be back.
Why Marcus Morrison?
Well, people are asking me why I picked him. I didn't pick him. My promoter offered me the fight, offered me the name, and I've been out of the ring for a long time. And Marcus Morrison, solid guy, decent record, somebody that's going to get in there, test me, somebody that I can go in there and practice and work on the things that I've been practicing on with Roy. 10-round fight, it's the perfect stepping stone to a big fight in the summer. And I'm not underestimating him. I'm not overlooking him. People are saying I'm the big favourite. I don't listen to any of that. As far as I'm concerned, he's got 2 hands, 2 gloves, and this is his big shot. So I'm expecting him to go in there and take it to me, and I'm going to bring it to him.
Is that how you're ultimately viewing this, though? You use that term stepping stone, and we know that you wouldn't overlook anyone that you were stepping into the ring with, but you've, in previous interviews we've done over the last 6 months, you've mentioned the likes of Charlo and all these kind of guys. So, but you're viewing Marcus Morrison as kind of, in your words, a warm-up fight before you go into those fights. Is that how you see it?
Listen, Marcus Morrison to me is a multi-million-pound fight. Without him, without getting past him, if I was to lose, I don't get the money, I don't get the big fights, I don't get the world titles. This is a multi-million-pound fight for me. My promoters wanted me to have a warm-up. That's what they're calling it. To me, he's just another guy I got to beat.
In some respects, fights like this are probably more dangerous than certain other fights, because there is an anticipation that you could overlook. We know you won't, but there is an anticipation that you're expected to win the fight and you are a favourite in the fight. So you've got to keep switched on and focused, regardless of what people say.
Absolutely, and there's been a lot of upsets lately with guys that have, haven't prepared or have overlooked their opponents. I'm not one of those guys, man. For me, every fight is a world title fight. I have to go in there, I have to make a statement, and I'm expecting Marcus to come in there and try and take me out, because this is his big shot. If he beats me, he's at the top of the list. So I got to be on my game 100%.
Let's talk about your link up with Sauerland. Obviously now teamed up with Wasserman, but talk to me about your relationship with Kalle Sauerland and why he's the best person to direct you in the next phase of your career.
Well, yeah, it was, obviously I went out to the States. I signed with PBC and Showtime, and COVID hit. I was supposed to fight Charlo last year. They had set that up. We both fought on the same bill at the end of 2019 in New York, and they were going to set that fight up for early 2020. COVID hit, ruined everything, and my career got put on hold. And the thing with PBC, they have so many fighters, and they just didn't have they weren't able to give me, or they weren't able to keep me as active as I needed to be. You know, so I was in a situation where I didn't know where I was fighting. I didn't know if I was fighting. I didn't know what show I was going to be on. I'd been inactive, and you know, that's when we got the call from the Sauerland team, Sauerland brothers, and they put an awesome deal in front of me. So I decided that was the best way to go. You know, am I disappointed that I didn't get to kind of go to America and, you know, get that new audience? Sure, but everything happens for a reason. And, you know, I'm a Brit. Fighting in Britain is always going to be, I'm always going to love doing it. It's always something I'm very passionate about. So I'm happy to be back, and there's some massive fights out there to be made out here, so I'm ready.
I spoke to your trainer, Roy Jones Jr., for quite some time yesterday about your developing relationship over the years with him, and yeah, it was good to kind of get his take. You know, we've heard from you talk about Roy and your training side of things, etc., but it must be good to have Roy here in the UK in your corner for this fight.
It's, you know, it's surreal. I never would have thought, you know, growing up as a kid, watching him, studying him, I never would have thought that Roy would one day be in my corner, training me. It's crazy how life works, you know. You know, I was in Vegas, COVID hit. I'd met Roy a week before at a fight show, and I'd found out, you know, we spoke, and I'd found out he had a private gym on his farm. All the Floyd's gym shut down in Vegas, which is where I was training at. You know, do I go home back to England? Do I stay here and see what happens with this COVID thing? I didn't know what to do. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if Roy's gym's going to stay open, because all the gyms apparently are closed. So we made the call, and he said, come on down. And I flew out the next day and ended up staying there for a year and a half. And now he's going to be in my corner for the rest of my career. So crazy how life works. And, you know, even though I haven't fought in so long, I still feel I've improved as a fighter, which is very hard for most fighters to say. I think most fighters have either stayed the same or got worse because of COVID. For me, I feel like I've actually improved just by staying with Roy, being with him and learning from him every day. So now it's just up to me to go out there and show off everything we've been working on over the last 16, 17 months.
Just from things that you've told me in interviews in the past regarding trainers that you've had, I did ask Roy yesterday, you know, from instructions and kind of the advice, whatever Roy does with you, how much of it does Chris take on board and listen to? And he said, I think he used the word like most of it, majority. So that relationship seems to be working on that scale compared to what you've told me in the past, your relationships with trainers.
Well, you know, I haven't really, you know, as you know, I haven't really had trainers. You know, I've had one or two guys here and there. It was always very hard for me to really trust in trainers because, you know, all right, you're telling me to do this, you're telling me to move that way, eat that, do this, train at this time. How do you know that's the right thing? You haven't done it. And that's just, and that's not to say that you can't be a great trainer without being an accomplished fighter, because actually most of the great trainers weren't, you know, world champion boxers, and actually most world champion boxers make terrible trainers. But it was just a mental thing with me. I found it hard to listen and trust somebody that hadn't actually been there and done it. Obviously, when Roy Jones tells you to do something, you know, even if you're not sure about it, you can go on YouTube and watch him do it against somebody else. So you know everything he's saying is 100%. So I think that trust and that belief in him is what has made this relationship so great.
But Chris, you talk about kind of, you find it difficult to trust trainers in the past because, yeah, you've kind of questioned possible methods, etc. But why take them on board in the first place as part of your team if you have those kind of doubts?
Well, I mean, who did I take on board? I haven't had any trainers. Obviously, my father's been there, and you know, I've learned so much from him. But he wasn't one of those day in day out trainers. He was there for a little while and go, and you know, so it wasn't. I was kind of left to my own devices. Ronnie Davis, again, amazing. Been with me from day one, but he wasn't training. He was an advisor. He was an overseer. You know, I would go and I would work with Floyd Mayweather Sr., but you know, I was only with him for, you know, a month or something, and then I wouldn't see him for a year or 6 months. I think I had Adam Booth for a fight. You know, and did I tell you how that relationship ended?
I'm not too sure if you've indulged in this information or not.
So I thought I might, but anyway. So yeah, it was a sparring session, and Michael Venom Page, the MMA fighter, came down to me. Have you heard the story?
I don't believe I have, actually.
He came down to the gym. I didn't actually know who he was at the time. I just thought I was having another normal sparring session. So he came down, we sparred for 1 round, and I always have 30-second rests in between rounds. That's just how I do it. So round finished. I said, all right, just so you guys know, it's 30-second rest. The bell's going to go in 30 seconds. And Michael's trainer said, no, we do minute rests. And I said, all right, well, that's what you might do, but you know, you've come down to spar me, and this is how I'm training, you know. So we're going to do 30 seconds. That's what I want to do. And his trainer was like, no, we're not doing 30-second rests. We're doing a minute rest. I was like, you know, said to him and Michael, listen, you know, no one's forcing you to be here. You came down to spar me. I won't do 30-second rests. If you're not comfortable with that, there's other guys waiting to get in the ring, so you can leave. And Michael got out of the ring, and they left. And Adam Booth left with them. He was upset, I guess, that I had sabotaged that particular spar. And I don't think I sabotaged it. I mean, that's how I train, you know, 30-second rests. You know, if you're not comfortable with it, then let other guys get in the ring who are comfortable. So in Adam Booth leaving, that just, you know, a trainer is always supposed to stick by their fighter, whether they're wrong or whether they're right. You stick by your man. He didn't stick by me. So that's when, you know, I kind of decided that relationship wasn't. I didn't think it was the best for me. But yeah, so to cut a long story short, aside from that, I haven't employed trainers. I haven't had guys around me. I've brought upon myself to schedule training, to decide how many rounds I'm doing, to decide what I'm doing in the gym. That was all on me for most of my career. But now, that has been passed to Roy. And he does set the schedule, and I listen to it.
I've forgotten his name, so excuse me, but the guy you were working with who was training you for the Nate Vasquez, excuse me, apologies about that. Nate Vasquez. So what was the situation there with Nate?
Nate was, he was a guy that I watched training a few fighters at Floyd's gym. After the Groves fight, I decided that I did need a trainer. And, you know, I had watched him, and, you know, I liked certain things that he was doing. I needed somebody. I didn't really know anybody in England that I would be comfortable training me. So I tested him out, and it worked. You know, it was, but you know, there's levels to it. Nate, you know, he was more of a pad man. Roy is a trainer. You know, Roy teaches you things and teaches you why you're doing these things. So yeah, it was, you know, perfect timing really, meeting Roy.
Okay, have you put your 10 grand bet on?
That bet will be placed, and the ticket stub will be posted within the next week. £10,000 on Billy Joe Saunders to get sparked by Canelo Alvarez. Yeah, it's going to happen. I know you don't want to hear that because he's your best bud, but you know that's what I think is going to happen.
I don't want to hear that. If that's what your opinion, that's your opinion.
We all know you don't want to hear it, but that's what I think is going to happen. I think he's going in there to give up his belt for a payday, and listen, I hope he proves me wrong. You know, I hope he proves that.
Do you really though?
Well, listen, I still want to fight him. Eventually, that fight still has to happen. So, what would I rather? Fight the guy who got battered by Canelo or fight the guy that beats Canelo? Obviously, I want to fight the guy who beats Canelo. But cannot see it. So, yeah, the £10,000 bet's going in, and you know I'm going to get a nice little payday at the end of that night.
Did you hear Billy Joe Saunders' response to you putting, or potentially putting on a £10,000 bet?
I heard something about him saying, pay that for a ringside seat or something like a ticket.
Yeah, his words were, use the money to buy a ringside seat. It's the closest you'll get to a Canelo fight.
Well, you know, he's got to say something. But you know, let's have it right. You know, since he fought me, he actually hasn't fought anybody until Canelo, in my opinion. No disrespect, but you know.
Well, Andy Lee, David Lemieux.
Sorry, I mean, listen. You know,
you can't say that you can't give any fighter credits for wins over people like Andy Lee and David Lemieux, surely.
You know, we'll agree to disagree, but in my opinion, he hasn't been tested. He hasn't had a true test since me. You know, so for him to talk about, oh, this is a close, I'm going to get to Canelo, you know, you haven't done anything. You nicked a fight against me, and then you've just coasted your way over the years, and now you're taking a payday to get beat. And then after you get beat, you're going to want to fight me for another payday. You know, that's the type of guy he is. I hope he wins, but I hope I lose my £10,000 because I want to fight him. I want to fight the guy who beats Canelo over the guy that got pummeled by Canelo, but I don't see it happening, and I think I'm going to make a nice little payday off of it.
There has been a whole host of other fighters that you've been kind of linked with, especially when you signed for Sauerland. I spoke to Callis Sauerland about potential fights with Liam Williams, Kell Brook, these kind of guys. We've spoken about as well. Remember you quite famously labelled those fights as warm-up fights. But are these potential fights that we could see you in as well?
In the summer, yeah. A lot of names out there. Eddie Hearn and Kell Brook have been talking a big game, so that's a potential fight for the summer. You know, there's a lot of great fighters in the middleweight division. You know, Ryota Murata has the full WBA title. I'm the interim world champion, so that fight makes sense. Charlo.
Golovkin you still want, obviously?
Golovkin is the fight that I want at the end of the year. You know, beat a big name in the summer, get Golovkin in the winter. That is the goal, and you know, that fight has to happen. It has to happen. He is the number one guy in the middleweight division. I want that title. I want that accolade. I want that crown. And now that I'm back down at middleweight, this is the perfect time to get it.
How realistic is that to happen by the end of the year?
I think it's very realistic. You know, the Sauerland brothers told me that's a fight they're actively pushing for. So, you know, and I don't see anybody else calling him out. I don't see the fans wanting anybody else to fight him. You know, they want somebody that's going to go in there and test his chin. They want somebody that's going to get in there and not be afraid to go at this guy. They know I am that type of man. So, yeah, the fight has to be made.
You were also called out by newly crowned British champion and also Commonwealth champion Felix Cash over the weekend. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't know.
Okay, I'm just pointing out that, yeah, a lot of fighters do call you out, but yeah, Felix Cash, after his win over Denzel Bentley last week, yeah, mentioned that you were a fight that he would like.
Yeah, I mean, you know, calling guys out, calling me out and actually getting in the ring with me is two different things. You know, I'm not looking at British level. I'm looking at world titles, and I'm looking at names, big names, big names. That's what 2021 is for me.
How have you found bubble life?
I've only been here for a couple of days. It's been all right. You know, I just stayed in my room for the first 24 hours before I got my COVID test back. But yeah, it's the same as any other week before a fight. You know, you're in the hotel, you're chilling, you're cutting the weight, you're in the gym, you're doing the pad work. You know, you're getting on the running machine. It's the same thing, really. And now that we've all kind of, you know, tested negative, we don't have to wear the mask. We can just walk about. So it's nice. I'm comfortable.
Do you think we could bring Roy in for a couple of minutes here? Oh, he's on the phone.
A couple of minutes.
Sorry to interrupt Roy's phone call here. All right, let me just get you to... Excuse me. Roy, we spoke last night and you were talking a little bit about your relationship, how it's developed over the years, over the last 2 or 3 years with Chris Eubank Jr., but what kind of Chris Eubank Jr. are we expecting to see this week against Marcus Morrison?
I'm expecting to see the same explosive Chris Eubank Jr. that we always see, just with a little more smartness behind it. So, I mean, the old Chris Eubank Jr., the one that I met before, probably could have beat this guy with no problem. And I still want him to beat the guy the same way he planned on doing it, just that I want you to have a little bit more of a thought process with it.
And we also spoke yesterday, and I said to you that from someone like yourself, taking on someone like Chris, you wouldn't just take on anyone for the sake of it. You'd have to truly believe in Chris's ability and still further potential for you to work with him, which you clearly do.
Yeah, what I really believe in the most, though, is that he's dedicated to learning boxing. That means more to me than anything, because I teach people all the time, but it's like I don't want to teach nobody that's not dedicated to learning. He's dedicated to learning, and he proved that to me right away.
Chris, yeah, this is obviously a flourishing relationship you have here with Roy.
It really is, and I didn't know what to expect when I first entered the gym. You know, it's Roy Jones Jr. You know, and I didn't know he was a trainer, and I thought maybe be there for an hour or two every few weeks, and then he'd just go and do his own thing. But no, he was on me 24/7 from day one, and I feel that's what a fighter needs as a trainer: someone that's dedicated, somebody that's going to actually spend the time, and that's what Roy's done.
Roy, Chris was just talking about past experiences with trainers, how he's found it difficult to trust someone, where he would look at a potential trainer and say, question their methods, etc., because he doesn't believe that possibly that they know more than him. Am I right in saying that? Sure. So, with knowing that, obviously, it doesn't question you because of your pedigree in boxing as a whole. But what do you think about those comments?
There's nothing wrong with those comments. That's how you should be. If a person can't teach you nothing, then what are you with him for? You understand me? So it's like, that's why I really want him to come and see me at first and see what he thought about my training method, see if he liked it. He didn't never leave. He came and stayed. So obviously it was what he was looking for because he stayed there. So I was like, okay, cool. And after about a week and a half it was, I asked, I said, you with me? He said, yeah, I'm with you. I said, all right. So I'm going to start opening up myself and go ahead and show you what I need to show you. But I want to see whether he was dedicated or not first.
Which you clearly see he is.
Of course, without a question. Was more dedicated than anybody there at the time.
That's quite a compliment as well, Chris.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about me because, I didn't have to leave the comfort of Las Vegas or England. I'm a city boy. Vegas, Brighton, London, that's where I thrive. That's what I love. I didn't know anything about being in the country surrounded by raccoons and snakes and alligators and armadillos.
Chickens
Running in and out of the ring while I'm sparring. I didn't know about any of that. And I still find that alien, but I put myself in that zone, in that uncomfort, because I wanted to be around the best. I wanted to learn from the best. I wanted to improve. Like I said, I didn't have to do any of that, but I did it. And I think that says a lot about my mindset and what I want to do moving forward. I always say it, that there's so much more for me to do in the game. There's so much more for me to achieve. And I think this is the man to help me do that.
He's targeted as his #1 fight for the end of this year, Gennady Golovkin. How do you like that fight for Chris?
I love that fight for Chris. I'm going to tell you the truth about it. Most of these guys really try to avoid Chris because of how explosive Chris is. Nobody loves to be hit by a guy who's explosive. That's what dominated Tyson's career. He was so explosive. So people don't want that explosiveness. So for him, a lot of them say they want to fight him, but they really don't because he's too explosive, which is good. So now if we can take that explosiveness and add a little bit more mentality with it to make him a mental guy who's also explosive, he becomes the most dangerous guy in the division.
You believe he's capable of beating Golovkin?
He's capable of beating everybody in the division because he has that explosiveness. When you got explosiveness and you're willing to learn to use that thinker, which he's a great thinker already, that's why he played poker so well. He's a great thinker and he got poker face. So he has all the attributes to be a great fighter, and I knew that already. You understand? But the more I learned about him, the more I learned that even more how far he can go because he has it. If you can play poker, it's like chess, like I said. Boxing is a chess match. But if you can play poker, you got to think, you got to be willing to gamble, you got to be willing to sit there and when you know something hurt, but you still got to be acting like it's okay. That's what you got to have in boxing to be the top. If you can't play poker or play chess, you can't be a top fighter.
That was very eloquently put.
Yeah, listen, it's, boxing is, I think it's 70% mental. People who don't know the sport, who are looking at us as fighters, they think you've got to be big and strong and fast, and that's how you become the best. But what I found is that the mental side of things, being smart, being relentless, that counts for way more. I've seen these guys, they're great bodies, fast, hitting the pads, they even spar great. But then when they get in the ring on the night, once those big lights are on, and the money's on the line, and the pride's on the line, and their life is on the line, they crumble. And they'll lose to a guy who's not as athletically gifted, but who has that mental strength. Roy is increasing my mental strength through his teachings, through his techniques, and I'm just excited to show it all off in a couple of days.
Well, 2 or 3 days, and then, fight night here in Manchester, live on Sky Sports Box Office and The Zone. So, good to see you back in the UK, Chris, fighting. And Roy, great to have you in Manchester. And, to be honest with you, everyone's talking about Roy being in Manchester ahead of anyone else on the card. So, okay, best of luck on the weekend.
Appreciate it.